But please share, folks. Please share. And want to hear what people have to say about this and what's going on. Robin, it does seem to me that we could be entering, we are almost certainly entering an entirely new phase in this whole Brexit process tonight.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think it's pretty much a foregone conclusion now, as much as anything can be. Labour this morning announced with glee that they're supporting the vote this afternoon. So the vote this afternoon only requires a majority of one, because it's not a vote being put forward under the Fixed Term Parliaments Act. It is actually an Act of Parliament, a bill, which they're going to attempt to pass, which will mean that they need only a majority of one. So
just for the background,
I think what will be interesting, though, Olly, will be to see the amendments that are attached to the bill. So just to explain that.
Before you do, just to make sure everybody's absolutely clear, how are they able to bypass the Fixed Term Parliaments Act? Because is that what they're doing? Or trying to?
It is, yeah. It is, yeah, because the bill will, I'm not sure if it'll repeal the Act, but it will supersede the Act, effectively. Yes. So normally you would only, under the Fixed Term Parliaments Act, all you would need would be a motion, so a vote in the House of Commons. But you would need a 2/3 majority of MPs to vote for a general election under the Fixed Term Parliaments Act. Now, that failed yesterday. So instead, they're coming back to Parliament with a bill.
299 in favour, didn't they? 299, 70 against, all the rest are abstentions.
Yeah, and they needed 400 and odd to pass it.
So the difference tonight?
Well, the difference tonight only needs to be one vote in favour.
Because they're approaching it a different way. Instead of using the Fixed Term Parliaments Act, they're trying to, as you say, supersede it. And that's what tonight's vote is about.
Exactly right, yeah.
Right, and so...
You realise I'm not on screen, Olly?
Oh, blimey. I apologise. I'll sort that out. So, okay, so tonight there will be amendments. Last night there were no amendments allowed. I was just curious as to the reason for that.
I can't tell you, but I think probably it's to do with the way that the Fixed Term Parliament Act was constructed that doesn't allow that. I'm not sure. Okay,
yes, that makes sense. But tonight amendments are allowed. Now, some of these amendments are quite frightening.
Yeah, I mean, have you got a list of them, Olly? Because I'm afraid I haven't got one to hand.
Well, I mean, for example, as I understand it, the idea of a second referendum has lost steam, one way and another. They don't seem to be able to unite behind that one. I don't know whether that's got anything to do with the meltdown at the HQ at Millbank for the People's Vote yesterday, when apparently Amber Rudd's brother was trying to sack people and they were refusing to go and stuff like that. But anyway, never mind that. Who cares, frankly? Sodom. But that amendment, at least, it sounds as though it's less likely to be tabled. However, there's a lot of talk about them putting forward an amendment to make it legislation that there is votes for 16 and 17-year-olds. Is that actually feasible? And the government surely would not accept a bill if it had that strapped to it.
Well, that's where it starts to get interesting. So just to explain this, the way, just for anybody who's not entirely familiar with the way in which bills pass through Parliament, when a bill is presented to the House, members of Parliament will have the option to present amendments. The Speaker then chooses which amendments are voted on, and the amendments are voted on before the bill. So, in other words, by the time that the MPs get to vote on the final bill, they're not voting on it on its original form. They're voting on it in its form with whichever amendments have been passed on it. Does that make sense? Is that a reasonable explanation? So there are things like, for example, lowering the voting age. Now, I mean, I think there are two. I'm not sure which ones are going to be passed. I don't know if that's even been announced yet. Which ones are going to be allowed amendments.
One other one is whether or not they can somehow take a no-deal Brexit off the table entirely.
Okay, well should we just cover the age one?
Yep.
Okay, so one of the amendments I understand is to allow 16, 17-year-olds to vote, basically for the first time. Now, the reason for that, why would you want that to be the case? Well, the reason for it is very simple, that if you look at the Leave versus Remain vote, there is a huge bulk of Remain votes. The younger you are, the more likely you are to vote Remain. And the Remain campaigns, and bear in mind the Remain campaign hasn't really stopped, it's carried on in full swing since 2016, have done a lot of work to persuade those people that somehow their future is being stolen. And so I think that amendment, they'll try and push that amendment through. I don't know exactly what's happening, and I've just got the Commons running on my other screen next to me, but I can't actually see anything on there. Can't actually see very much on there at the moment. But that's why they want to do it. That's why they want the amendment. But you asked the big question there, which is that if they were to get that amendment through, would the government then vote against their own bill?
Yes.
And kill it?
Or would could Boris not pull it?
Would they pull it?
I think he could pull it, couldn't he? He could say, you know what, I'm not going to allow this to go through with these amendments.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's
so
a possibility.
It's a big crunch time for possibly Boris tonight with how he treats some of these amendments as well.
Yeah.
And another amendment they're talking about is taking no deal off the table. Now, it seems to me, from the rhetoric that we've received from the Prime Minister, if he's true to what he says, as opposed to what this game plan may or may not be, the master plan with him and Dominic Cummings or whatever, if he's true to what he said, then is there not a sincere risk that no Brexit would be taken off the table tonight as an amendment to get a GE through? But also, conversely, is it not the case that the next government would not in any case be bound by the actions of this Parliament?
Well, I mean, Boris has said very straightforwardly that he will not take no deal off the table. I can't see an amendment that takes it off the table being passed, but who knows in these times what's going to occur. And I think this really comes back. The ultimate question comes back to where you feel that Boris's loyalties lie, what he's actually trying to achieve. I think that's the real question.
Yes.
Maybe we should go back to that question, shall we?
Well, I mean, yes, please. What are your thoughts in your heart about the Prime Minister?
Well,
is he mate in drag, or is he the real?
Well, let me just sort of set the scene, if you will. I think when Boris brought his deal to the people a couple of weeks ago, and said, look, the EU said there was going to be no renegotiation, but they've accepted renegotiation. Haven't I done well? And I've got this amazing deal, and it means we're leaving the EU on the 31st, and we won't be part of the customs union. We won't be part of the single market. We won't be under the jurisdiction of the ECJ. And everybody went, yeah. And then they read it and realised, no, that's not true. In fact, we won't be leaving on the 31st because, in fact, his treaty means staying in the EU in practical terms, although there is a sort of get out in July next year, in practical terms, because we won't have a free trade agreement agreed by then. It's just not enough time. In practical terms, it means 2 or 3 years. And
that's right.
And frankly, it's open-ended. It could go on much, much longer than that afterwards. That would really depend on the composition of the House of Commons as to what happens there.
Sure, absolutely. And in all that time, during all that time, we have absolutely no power. We are entirely, we are a vassal state during that time to the EU. No.
Yeah, the problem really is that we are a vassal power, as Boris very accurately put it the first time. But now, of course, he's proposed it a second time, having attacked it the first time round. The guts of the problem is that the ECJ, the European Court of Justice, have control over the whole process, because anything that we disagree with or appeal ultimately goes to the ECJ for a decision, and as we know, they're a politicised court.
Unbelievable.
That's the real problem here.
Unbelievable. So basically, let me get this right. What Boris Johnson has done in a clause in that withdrawal agreement is to give the other side essentially a legal veto over our future.
Well, it gives them enormous control because, for example, what it means, I mean, throughout that, in inverted commas, transition period, which is really just an extension, actually, it means that we have no votes in the Parliament. I mean, frankly, we can't achieve much anyway, even if all our MEPs agreed we're only 10% of the vote in the Parliament. And we have no veto, so we have to accept all European Council decisions. We don't have a seat at the table.
Yes.
And what it means throughout that period is that we have to negotiate a free trade agreement on the basis of what they call best endeavours. Now, who determines whether we are proceeding on best endeavours? The ECJ, not us. As a barrister who, working in Brussels, who's been analysing this, put it, you really have to think very, very hard about signing any agreement which gives the other side the ability to determine whether or not you're negotiating fairly or not. I mean, this
actually
really
doesn't sound so very different from the backstop clause that gave the EU a veto over whether or not they would release their cash cow at some point in the future when they decided that they wanted to basically go bankrupt and implode. Not something that they were ever likely to do, which was why that agreement received so much ridicule. Aside from all the very many other concerns within the agreement, now we seem to have something that isn't that far off the same thing by giving the ECJ arbitration powers over how this agreement is conducted. It's like trading or trying to negotiate a trade deal, is it not, with one hand or maybe even two strapped behind your back?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And more importantly, it commits us to negotiate a trade deal, full stop, as opposed to leaving and then being in a proper negotiating position where we've actually got a level playing field. Within the bill itself, or the treaty actually, it commits us to a level playing field. That level playing field, I'll just find the clause, if I may, Ollie, so I can read
let's
that.
Get this right.
That clause
I
to you.
People need to know this. I mean, this is seriously frightening stuff. Yeah, and I have to say that whilst I personally want to think the best of this Prime Minister, Boris, and I think he's a nice bloke, I'm sure it'd be great fun down the pub and all the rest of it, but I am seriously concerned that any British Prime Minister could be presenting this deal to the British public and saying it's a good deal, it's a deal for Brexit, when it seems to me that it is not. As you say, that word you used, it is an extension, a very, very expensive extension with a future unknown, and in a way where we will almost certainly be hindered in whatever trade negotiations we want to have, for example, with the United States and with our Commonwealth that we have a responsibility to, that is about time we did something about, instead of playing with this EU whatnot club. Okay, sorry, I'm having a rant now. Robin, carry on. Did you find that?
Okay. So, yeah, just going backwards slightly. Clause 77 of the political declaration says the parties should uphold common high standards applicable in the Union and the United Kingdom at the end of the transition period. Right, so uphold, let's delete high standards, and just because that's just uphold the common high standards applicable. So common applicable, right? So the standards that are applicable in the Union and the United Kingdom at the end of the transition period. Well, there'll be whatever the ECJ, whatever the EU decide they are, because they make all the rules between now and the end the transition period.
Yes, that's right. So, for example,
and it goes on
fish,
to say,
in the areas of
state aid, competition, social and employment standards, environment, climate change, and, here's the kicker, relevant tax matters. Now, what is a tariff? A tariff is a duty, and what is a duty? It is a form of tax. Mm-hmm. So what that possibly implies is that we may not even be able to set our own tariffs, because they'll have to be part of the common high standards applicable. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does.
So what it implies is we may not even be able to set tariffs for the rest of the world. We'll have to have commonality with the EU. So I wrote a piece yesterday, which you can find on the Great Brexit Debate. If you go onto Facebook and search for the Great Brexit Debate, you'll find it there. Mm-hmm. And I titled it, "When is a customs union not a customs union?" Well, when you don't call it a customs union, but in fact it has all of the implications of a customs union, just without the name. In fact, it might actually have border controls at customs points, at points of entry and exit from the UK. But whether or not they would have any purpose if, in fact, we were completely aligned, well, they'd be there for show only and probably be fairly swiftly dismantled. So it's.
So, are we gaining anything?
The deal is the.
Are we coming back to and the reflection on Boriss as well? Are we gaining anything by this? As an aside from that, well, first of all, let's cover that. Are we gaining anything? Is there any sensible reason for us to be signing this deal? Well,
exactly. There is only a notional reason, which is to avoid a crash out. Yeah. Now we all know that a crash out. Do you mean a
WTO soft landing?
Well, exactly. We mean a clean Brexit. We mean a clean Brexit with bilateral deals that are already in place. That's actually what we mean. There is no crash out.
So the only argument that's being mooted here in favour of this deal is that it is somehow better than having no Brexit. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, if it's a pretty wonky logic, that one. Surely what this deal does is it splits the Brexit vote, because the more exposure this deal gets, the more Brexiteers look at it and realise, hang on a second, can we trust Boris? What's he actually trying to do? Isn't he just trying to sign us up to vassalage again? And therefore they in huge numbers go to the Brexit Party, and therefore it splits the Brexit vote away from it being predominantly a Conservative vote to being a much more even split, maybe even more than that with the Brexit Party. That
there is so much
the electoral situation considerably. But you've had this, basically what happened as soon as the deal came out, all of the Conservative organisations, so the campaign groups and so on, that are essentially Conservative-led or funded, or have Conservative loyalists running them, all sort of closed ranks, and they said, guys, you've got to support the deal because otherwise it'll be no Brexit. Well, I'm afraid actually the reverse is true. The greater risk of no Brexit is from the deal, because the fact is that as soon as people understand really what the deal entails, they don't want to vote for the Conservatives. Therefore, the vote is split. Therefore, it makes Brexit harder. And the reality is, therefore, that we're more likely to get Corbyn. I mean, that's the difficulty in all this.
And when that happens, we will have votes for 16 and 17-year-olds, and it will be game over, because these common purpose kids will be voting for what their teachers told them to support, the EU. That we must prevent that. Now, assuming it will be prevented in any possible amendment tonight, that's a concern nonetheless for the future. The people may wonder why we're harping on about the deal at all, because Boris has buried it. No, he hasn't. He suspended it. He will be using that, as I understand it, in his Tory manifesto and selling that, but not selling a no deal. Now, that is where we are going to have this fragmentation, no, Robin, between the Conservatives and the Brexit Party.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a condition of the extension, which Boris accepted by letter yesterday, was that there would be no further negotiation on the treaty. So you can have as many debates in Parliament as you like. Mm-hmm. You can put the Act of Parliament that enables it through Parliament as much as you want. You can have as many debates as you want about all kinds of amendments. But as was pointed out on Question Time last week, which Lord was it? Ex-Chancellor of the Exchequer, I forgot his name. What's his name?
Lamont.
Lord Lamont said.
Lamont. Yeah.
Norman Lamont said, he said, look, people, you've got to understand that when you put an Act of Parliament through that is basically to ratify a treaty or to enact a treaty, it can't be amended. You can't amend the treaty. You can only confirm it. And this is exactly the same case with the Lisbon Treaty. They had, I think it was 2 weeks of debates on the Lisbon Treaty or something going through Parliament. But and Mark Francois, the Conservative MP, was the man. He was Europe Minister at the time. It was his job to pilot it through. And as he explained, we could not change one dot over one I or cross one T. There was nothing you could do. It was all completely pointless, really, debating it. All it was doing was just making people aware of what was in it. Didn't give the House of Commons any power to change it. All they had to do was agree it or not agree it. So it's just down to a final vote.
Why are people?
So it's a dire situation.
Go on.
It's a dire situation. I mean, it's a very difficult situation. I mean, Boriss is going to go to the country, I think, saying, we'll leave deal or no deal, and he doesn't want to take no deal off the table because he doesn't want to lose a large proportion of the Brexit voters who are quite happy with no deal. In fact, I think most are. If there is no sensible deal on the table, then most Brexit voters will say, we'll go with no deal.
Yes.
But so I don't think he wants to go to the country on any other basis. But the reality is the only offer he's got on the table is that deal. So unless he's actually going to the country and saying, no, look, I will tear up that treaty until the EU, they've got to negotiate again for a third time, then I think he's on a very, very difficult situation. And then the other side of this we've got to look at, I don't know if you want to go into this now, but what we're up against with the Labour Party and the Liberals. Do you want to go into that?
Yeah, I do. But before we do, as a bit of an aside, something else I don't understand, actually a lot, but one of the things I don't understand is why the ERG now are backing this deal, or at least are not completely averse to this deal, and pointing out the kind of concerns that you've just pointed out.
Yeah. Well, the original plan was to try and force the deal through Parliament last week as quickly as possible, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. And it got hijacked. That plan.
The timetable.
By the timetable vote, basically the timetable
the actual
motion,
deal
which
got backed
didn't accept
with
it
a
being
majority
pushed all the way
of
through
30.
the Commons last week. Now, the outcome, therefore, of that was that people have scrutinised the treaty and scrutinised the bill, because the bill was required to be published the next day, last Tuesday, and realised what a horror story it is. It's a mess.
I mean, I do find it incredible that the Steve Bakers and the Mark Francois of this world are not on their hind legs in the Commons, ripping this deal to shreds. And I find it very, very worrying that there's nobody that's standing up for what is true Brexit, because the reason is that they were told, these people were all told, look, don't worry, sign up for the deal, although it looks horrific, we'll be able to renegotiate it, we'll get out by July time. But actually, when you read the deal, that's a big hope. Yeah, absolutely.
It's very unlikely. It's very unlikely that that outcome would be achieved.
So essentially,
it's a total mess. And then you go all the way back and you say, well, what was Boris's original intention? Is he really up for a proper Brexit, or has he actually always been trying to find some compromise in the middle, which actually really just means Brexit in name only?
No Brexit at all. Just as you say, Brexit in name only. That's all that deal is. There is no Brexit until we have physically left. For one thing, because, well, as Robin I think pointed out, Corbyn probably a Keir Starmer type government, or if vote Corbyn, get Starmer, and you get a Blairite, and we will not leave. That is guaranteed. Right. So now moving on to the coalitions and the concerns on both sides. Robin, we are looking at a general election where, from a Brexiteering point of view, you have a choice by the sounds of it. And Boris, prove me wrong, please, in the next few days, and I will be the first one to eat my hat. But it seems to me right now that the choice is between voting for Brino, i.e. remain a Tory government, or voting for the Brexit Party and then getting leave, except they won't be able to put a government together anyway, unless there is a coalition between the Tories and the Brexit Party, which is extremely unlikely, an alliance, an election pact. There's a huge chance that we're going to end up with a Labour, Lib Dem, SNP hodgepodge and Remain.
Yeah, I mean, if you put Labour, Liberal Democrats, SNP, Greens, Plaid Cymru together in a pact to stop Brexit entirely, to revoke or remain, or revoke and remain, then it's a difficult situation. And I think that the difficulty is that if Boris were in a situation where he was going to the country as the real champion of a real Brexit, then I think it would be a different matter. But now he's not really positioned himself as a champion of a real Brexit. He's split the vote. Half the people are going, well, you're not after a real Brexit, and half the people are going, I still believe, but in their heart of hearts going, I really don't know if I do believe or not. That's the difficulty, and it's really just the Tory hardcore, those people that always, when push comes to shove, will go with the party because they're tapped on the back and they're told, all this thing you've worked for decades is the Conservative Party. And don't worry, we'll get the best deal for the country. You just keep on banging the drum. Even those guys are going, hang on a sec, what's going on here? A lot of us remember Maastricht, in 92, 93, 92, 93.
Yep.
Remember what happened there, how the Conservatives forced it through. We've seen Prime Minister after Prime Minister who think that they can get a better deal for the UK out of the EU, and all of them just fall straight. All of those seeds just fall on stony ground. It never works out. But yet again, maybe we're in the same situation. I mean, it's very difficult. Do you want to talk about the danger from Labour and the Liberals now?
Well, yeah, please, absolutely, carry on.
I mean, my concern is that since arguably early 2018, but maybe before, this really has been the strategy. It was to force Corbyn from being in a Brexit supporting position to slowly but surely push him away from that position to a people's vote position, and then really to a Remain position and fight a general election. That was always their plan. Trying to overthrow it with a people's vote, I think, was always a bit of a feint, a vehicle for them to make the arguments. But actually, what do you do? I mean, what do you do if you have another referendum? Is it 1-1? It doesn't really solve the problem, does it?
No.
Whereas a general election actually does empower a government to do whatever is voted for as the headline thing. So we'll have to see what Labour's position is going into a general election, what their policy position is on Brexit. If they go wholeheartedly for a Remain, then it's very, very difficult. They've been preparing this for a very long time. So I heard a report, I think it was last night, that they were doing highly targeted Facebook advertising and social media advertising. So Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, probably.
This is the Labour Party.
In order to try and encourage as many under 35s to register to vote as possible. Now, the number I heard was that there's been a couple of million have registered to vote since Boris Johnson became Prime Minister. So if that's anywhere close to being true, then that gives them a huge lump of votes. Because, of course, with social media advertising. You can target the profiles of people who are not just of that age group, but are of a Remain profile of that age group. And they've invested a huge amount of time and effort into persuading those people their future has been stolen. And the problem they've had in the past is those people haven't voted at all, or they're not even registered to vote, so they couldn't if they wanted to. So I have this horrible fear that we may find ourselves coming over the hill with our rifle slung over our shoulders to see the enemy who we thought would be cowering in the valley, in fact, on the other hilltop, bristling with weaponry, ready to try and blow us out of the water. And so it's going to be a very, very interesting scenario. I mean, we are literally going to be fighting for our nation.
All those Soros buses taking these young Turks to the polls. So we are looking at it's absolutely dreadful. I mean, the prospect is really appalling now at this coming election. It's very close, though. No, it's a bit close to call. It looks as though we're going to end up with a coalition government again. Which way would you say it would go, Robin?
Yeah, I mean,
is there any chance?
If we look at
is there any chance that the Tories and the Brexit Party could coalesce?
Not officially, I would say. But in terms of where they put their campaigning effort, yes. So, for example, Northern Labour seats that are heavy Leave seats, where Conservative candidates can't win because of entrenched tribalism against the Tories, not necessarily for Labour, but sort of natural Labour voters who won't necessarily vote Labour because they're Leavers, but they won't vote Tory because that would be, sacrilege to do that. So there are situations where the Brexit Party, if they can run good candidates and good campaigns, and the Conservatives don't put in too much effort, run paper candidates, if you like, then there's good possibilities there.
Is that going to happen?
It's a slightly different situation. You imagine if we're talking about a Labour seat, there is no sitting Conservative MP there. There is only a candidate. Now that's a much easier situation than if you've got a situation where you've got a Tory candidate sitting.
Yes.
Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So I think those are target seats. But what we've got to watch is Conservatives getting turfed out in the West Country, in London, in the constituencies surrounding London that are Remain. I live in Guildford in Surrey. This is a 57% Remain constituency. Now we don't have a Conservative MP at the moment. We've got Anne Milton, who lost the whip a few weeks ago. Mm-hmm. What are they going to do with her? Are they going to give her the whip back and let her run as the candidate? If she does, then there'll be two Remain candidates in the constituency. There'll be the Lib Dems, who did have this seat 2 or 3 times ago, and we'd have Anne Milton, who's a Remainer. I mean, deep Remainer now, and that's another interesting situation because if the Brexit Party candidate runs a great campaign, he could split the Remain vote in this constituency. So some of the Remain vote goes to the Lib Dems, some of the Remain vote goes to the Conservative, and the Brexit Party scream through the middle and capture it. And I think, so what we're seeing a tactical voting scenario.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, as happened in Wales, as we saw the last by-election, the Lib Dems stood aside, didn't they? Plaid Cymru stood aside, and the Lib Dems won that seat, took it from the Tory guy, who was a crook or something, who nonetheless was still on the podium to try and get re-elected.
He'd been recalled because of an expenses problem.
But he actually did well and would have won had the Brexit Party stood aside, for example, and not split the vote. If you look at the numbers, they didn't cooperate. The Lib Dems and the Greens and Plaid Cymru, they did cooperate, and the Lib Dems won that seat. They won that by-election.
Exactly.
The fear now is that they continue to be more organised than the Leave side, with all their money and logistics that the money buys, and therefore can essentially buy the ticket into that coalition.
Yeah, exactly. And the difficulty is that although you can control mainstream media, it has to provide some degree of balance in a campaign time frame. Social media doesn't have to. It doesn't have to be balanced at all.
No,
there's no legislative control over social media, and these guys own social media. You and I have experienced getting bans or functional bans. We've seen lots of people deplatformed.
Yep.
Imagine that.
I can't stream this on Facebook today.
The pressure we're going to
for a similar reason. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Say that again, Olly.
Yeah, no, I can't even stream this on Facebook today. This show, it's going out on YouTube. I can't put it out on Facebook. I don't know why. They're always playing. But okay, so we've got that problem with their better organisation. We've got the problem with the 2 million reportedly extra under 35s who are registered now to vote because of, again, a more joined up Remain campaign to try and get these folks politicised. And we've also got there was another thing as well. There are these factors against us. I'm just trying to think. There is one other factor as well.
We've also got the other complication, that bringing back to your question earlier about the ERG members. Now, the ERG have supported this deal. Therefore, a lot of Brexiteers who are looking at it and going, well, we can't trust the ERG anymore. So let's take a specific example. We've got Steve Baker, who's... Well, let me give you the example of Steve Baker, who is the chairman of the ERG, the European Research Group, so one of the original Spartans, the people who didn't sign up to Theresa May's deal. They voted against it all 3 occasions, these Spartans. Yep. Steve is the sort of lead guy in that respect. Steve's constituency is High Wycombe. He, at 2017, his majority was reduced to only 6,500. Now, if the Brexit Party candidate runs in that seat, now that seat voted 52% Remain at the 2016 referendum. If that vote is split, so the Brexit vote is split, because a lot of people won't vote for Steve, they don't trust him now, because he's supporting Boris's deal. And if that vote is split with the Brexit Party there, then the result will not be. It will be either a Labour or Lib Dem. I can't remember what the complexion is in that constituency. Let's have a quick look.
Yeah, sure. And there are many seats like that. I mean, at the last GE, there were, I don't know, at least a dozen or a couple of dozen seats or something where the margin was fractional. Yeah, well, so High Wycombe, Steve Baker won in 2017 with nearly 27,000 votes. Labour Party were behind on over 20,000 votes. So there's a difference of 6,500. You only need to get half of those to switch. Yes. And he's lost it. I guess just down the road from High Wycombe, in fact, the adjoining constituency, Beaconsfield, that's Dominic Grieve, one of our favourite sons. And so he's been deselected or kicked out or whatever, had the whip removed. Presumably he's not going to get that back in his case, but he's saying he's going to run. And so also people like him, the Anna Soubras, will again knock out some Tory votes that otherwise would go to the Tory party candidate.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, Dominic Grieve's constituency he had a majority in 2017 of 25,000 or 24,500. That's a really interesting one because it's a 50-50 Remain Leave constituency. It is. So yeah, that's a
and there
really,
are lots
really
like that.
One.
There are lots like that.
This is the thing. Yeah, this is the thing. Every single constituency is going to have to be looked at on a case by case basis. And the electorate. Us particularly, I mean, we'll see this on both sides of the divide, but the electorate is going to have to be looking at it, making a judgment call that, even if the candidate is somebody that you really have a personal attachment to, the fact is that if you vote for them, you're probably going to lose them anyway, and in fact, you might have to vote for the Brexit Party to have a chance of beating the Remain candidate and therefore, creating a Remain Parliament. So we're going to have to be brutally calculating in where we place our votes as individuals. And we're going to have to be able to, those of us who are actively participants in politics, so all of those people who are commenting and watching us right now, we are those people. I mean, if you look at the UK, how do you consider the volume of people that are truly politically engaged? Well, look at how many people watch Question Time, a few million. Look at how many people follow, for example, Laura Kuenssberg's Twitter feed, about 1 million. Robert Peston, about 1 million. There are actually only a small proportion of the electorate who really know what's going on, who are really politically engaged. And our role is going to have to be the foot soldiers who go and communicate to the rest of the electorate what they've got to do in order to get what they want.
But again,
because if we don't do that, it'll be chaos.
But sir, you've been doing it, I've been doing it, we've been trying it, and we know it's so difficult to get these grassroots groups to join together. We've got so much firepower, but it's like a splatter gun because there's no join up. And until we see that, I don't see how we can take on this enormous and well organised, logisticized Remain campaign. Well,
I tell you what we have got, Ollie, on the flip side of that. What we've got the older voters. We've got people who are actually quite time rich, although they may not necessarily have a lot of money. We've got a lot of people who are time rich, and actually can do a lot of things. I think probably what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to run a street campaign, and we are going to have to stop distributing information through people's letterboxes, knocking on doors, that sort of stuff. Have a sort of nationwide delivery, create a nationwide delivery network at the last minute. I think that's probably the best way we can do it. So what I mean is that normally what would happen is if I wanted to run a political campaign, I would produce some campaign literature and I would get it printed in huge volumes. Then I would drop boxes around at lots of people's houses and they would deliver it. I think probably what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to deliver it electronically, and ask people to print an A4 piece of paper, chuck it round 20 houses in their road. I know it might sound radical, but I can only see that way of turning this one is by going from a print and distribute model to a distribute and print model, and getting all our foot soldiers to go and push them through doors, and then drive those people not necessarily to social media but to websites. We really do. We absolutely do. I set up this group on Facebook called Lobby for Democracy. The idea being that we go in en masse on a daily basis whilst they're sitting in Parliament to lobby our MPs, and we have the democratic right, as Robin taught me actually, to go into that lobby, Central Hall in Westminster, and without an appointment to petition our MP, and we have that democratic right. Any British citizen can do that without an appointment. If enough of us did that, that would be great. So anyway, you can check that out. Hashtag Lobby for Democracy it talks about that. You can find that on Facebook. And the thing about that group also, if you want to use it to share anything that is for the cause, I don't care who's behind it, if it's for the cause and it's peaceful, then please use that, share it there, and people there will share it for you and help you. And I completely agree with you, Robin. We need these. They're often besmirched as, if you like, keyboard warriors or what have you, but the fact is they're more important than anybody else, in my opinion, because, my word, that's how we get news, which is not biased, hopefully. Hopefully we're straight thinking about these things. Unfortunately, the other side is not. Just another couple of points that also worry me about this forthcoming election, Robin. Can I just pick up your point? Before you go on, Ollie, can I just pick up one of your points there?
Please.
The point you've made about the value that there is in people that share things and all that kind of thing. I mean, I can see on the comments we've got Amanda is on the comments currently is hacking away at a keyboard. Amanda's a great example of somebody who shares lots and lots of things and gets involved on the Great Brexit Debate on a daily basis. And I make a point with almost every other post that I put on the Great Brexit Debate of saying thank you to people, and I really, really, really mean it, because if you've just clicked that share button once, you've become a political activist. Like it or not, you've become a political activist, and you are doing that job. You are helping us do that job, and it is so vital. But I think what we're going to have to do is ask people to go the next step. You're going to have to get out of your armchair, and rather than be a keyboard warrior and armchair activist, you're going to have to start going and delivering some things, because people are in a campaign time frame. The people that we need to vote are going to be living in an information bubble fed to them by mainstream media and the social media that we can't interrupt, and they're only going to be getting one side of the story. And in order to debunk the nonsense that they'll start pushing out, we're going to have to be able to communicate directly with people, and that is going to mean putting bits of paper through their doors and talking to people. If you don't want to go and talk to people, and I think most people won't want to, then just pushing things through the door. If you've got a release on a Monday and it said, look, can you print 20 of these and put them through somebody's door, would you do it? I mean, can maybe we ask people to answer that question in the comments? Olly, do you want to reiterate that?
Yes. I mean, would you? So would you get involved distributing leaflets in your locality? But we need again, it comes down to, Robin, does it not, having a central hub of information that people that can then print off, and which is actually dead simple to do. But I think one of the other things, looking with the shoe on the other foot, is that people are, if you like, they're a bit fed up of initiatives. It's like petitions. But I mean, you're right. I'm not saying you're wrong. We got to do that. We have to do it. But I'm just saying one of the things we're up against is that people, I think, have been worn down.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's true. But let's not overplay that. Let's not,
No,
we've got to win them.
I'm sorry,
we've got to win this
negative.
battle.
We have to bloody well try. So where do they get these leaflets?
Well, I think that's what people like you and I need to be working on straight away and work out what strategy is. I mean, I'm part of numerous groups of people like us who have an ability to be able to push stuff out on social media. And I pushed a piece out on Monday, or was it yesterday? Might have been yesterday or the day. Monday was it yesterday? It was yesterday, Monday, or Sunday, I can't remember. Which was about the liability of up to 500 billion that we have if we sign up to a deal with the EU. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's got to 350,000 people so far.
Yes.
So we can get messages out via social media to a hardcore of people.
I would be happy
we can
to
get
help
those
too. If I can help with writing skills. But I mean, basically, people need to, I think we should all be pretty much acquainted with the facts by now to create our own leaflets as well. But I will certainly share anything that comes my way, Robin, and put stuff on Lobby to Democracy on Facebook as well. One of the other things...
Thank you, David Lanyon, who's just said that. He'll go and leaflet.
One of the other problems we've got, possibly... one of the things that was in the Queen's speech, actually, was Boris's desire for voter ID. That presumably isn't going to come in time for this next election now. At the last election, as I recall, there were all sorts of claims that people had been voting twice, mainly students, who were voting at mum and dad's and in their university town. So we don't have voter ID. We have that threat as well. Just as an aside, the Electoral Commission, they haven't done anything about those stories that were going out, as I understand it. It's just been swept under the rug.
Yeah, I mean, this was the problem in Peterborough.
Yes.
That there was widespread evidence and allegations of, people turning up and voting when they weren't actually the people they said they were. I mean, if you know what it's like when you go into a polling station. You go into a polling station, they ask for your name, and you say, "Oh, I've forgotten my polling card." They say, "Oh, don't worry, as long as we've got your name on the list, you can vote." I mean, that's completely open to corruption.
Lots of talk about postal voter fraud at Peterborough as well.
Postal voter fraud the same. No? So, without any legislation to prevent that fraud, I mean, again, we're hobbled with that. So, what we really have got to do is deliver a new methodology to be able to achieve this. And I'm in contact with lots of people, with lots of political parties who do the same sort of things that we do, some on smaller scale, some on much bigger scale, and those are the people that we're already sort of starting together to talk about strategy. Yes. So I think we'll see where we get to over the next couple of days, and we'll see how the vote goes today, and if the result is a general election by the end of the day being announced. I think it's going to be either the 12th of December or the 9th. I mean, the Lib Dems want the 9th, and the reason the Lib Dems want the 9th, and are probably going to table an amendment for that, is because they feel that by the 12th, all the students who are at university will have gone home, yet they'll have registered at the university towns. So that'll hurt their votes, and that's why they're trying to change it to the 9th. But we'll find out pretty much, I think, by the end of the day whether there's going to be a general election. There probably is going to be. We'll know the date. We'll know how much time we've got to get things going. But we are literally in a fight for democracy and our nation.
The last concern I have, Robin, and maybe this is a slightly supercilious concern, but again, given the demographic and how important they are to each camp, winter election, if it's a harsh winter, if it's a very poor weather polling day, that's a problem.
Yeah, I mean, it is a problem. I mean, I remember doing one campaign. I think it must have been a by-election campaign. I mean, I've done a lot over 15 years, so it's difficult to remember the specific one. But I remember literally, it was a very, very marginal vote, and we were knocking on doors to try and get our vote out. So let me explain. Within an election campaign, what you'll do is go and get vote pledges. So you're asking people, and on the doorstep, you're saying to them, "Can we rely on your support?" That's the question you'll always get if you see somebody canvassing on your doorstep. And they will mark that down on a piece of paper, and that goes into a database. And then at the end of the campaign, so just before the vote, it's what we call the Go TV phase, which is the get out the vote. That's what Go TV stands for. Right. Because campaigns are won and lost on not whether people support you or not, but whether you actually get them to go out and vote.
Yes.
And for the older generations particularly, which is where our hardest vote is, if you like, getting those people out on cold winter streets. If there's snow on the ground on December the 12th or the 9th, that's going to be really, really difficult. We're going to have to be literally getting out in cars and going and getting people.
Yeah, we are.
So they can vote. And that's exactly what we're doing in the by-election I'm talking about. I remember there was one lady, she said, "Oh, vote if you'll come and get me." So we went down there to her little flat, and she said, "You'll have to carry me to the car," because she was disabled and she couldn't get her I can't remember what the problem was, but we couldn't get her wheelchair into the car, so we literally had to carry her and then carry her into the polling station. And it may come down to that.
Robin, thank you so much. Thank you so much indeed. I really, really appreciate that. God bless you, mate.
Good stuff. Okay.
Robin Horsley from the Great Brexit Debate.
To see our future videos, subscribe to our YouTube channel and click the bell icon. That way you'll get a notification by email as soon as a new video is available. In the meantime, please do help us out and like and share or retweet this post so your friends and followers can see it too.